Hello, welcome to another episode of How to Start a Board Game Company from Off the Page Games. I'm Jay Cormier. We have a second episode here in week 3 that I'd like to share with you because things are moving pretty quickly right now. Even though I'm not planning to do a lot of stuff till later, there's things that are happening right now I wanted to share with you all. This week and this episode is about finances. Now I want to first just mention that everything I'm talking about here is all kind of like not necessarily financial advice for anybody, but this is again what I'm doing and how I'm kind of planning. I have a friend that is helping me out with all my finances. He used to be like a financial guy for Apple, and he knows his way or two around spreadsheets and financial stuff. See, this is why I need advice and help. So I got him on the line. Let's bring him in. All right, here I am with Kevin Wilson, my finance guy. Kev, how you doing?
Good. Thanks, Jay.
Okay, so let's get to some meat and potatoes here about what we're doing here. Kev, you're going to help me out with the financial planning of my company. And so first off, I want to talk to you about is banking. What do I need for a bank? I assume I just can't use my regular checking account to run my business.
No, even though you're set up as a sole proprietorship, in theory, you could use your own bank account because effectively the company is you the way you've set it up right now. But for the sake of simplicity, I think it's better to have a separate bank account. Eventually, if you were to become a corporation, an LLC, then you definitely need to have a separate bank account at that point in time because that's when you're really separating your personal who you are, Jay Cormier, from your company itself. But for right now, I think it's fine just to have a separate bank account for the company. And you just need one bank account. You don't necessarily need a bank account per game because you'll use a accounting software or something like Quicken or Simple Books or something along those lines to be able to separate out your expenses and revenue in that bank account into different projects and different categories.
I see. Is that Quicken? Is that just like an app or a downloadable thing now, or is it?
As far from what I know, and I'm not an accountant per se, I'm a finance guy, and that's a whole other conversation.
Sure.
But the software, as far as I know, Quicken has gone to a pay per month model, so it's a subscription and it's a web-based app, and you give it your bank account information, and it ties into that, pulls in the transactions, and then you categorize things from there. And that also sets you up for tax season as well. So these are important things that you want to keep in mind when running a business. Is you don't want to be trying to figure out all of your expenses at the end of the year. You want to know it on a month-to-month basis.
So as far as timing goes, I even though I'm not like paying people yet or whatever, I guess I am doing some like buying a few things here and there and whatnot. I guess does it make sense to do it right away, like get a bank account right away, or should I wait until later? I don't know if you even know the answer to that.
Yeah, it probably makes sense to do it sooner rather than later. Like one of the aspects about what you're doing right now, Jay, is you're not only kickstarting a game as your first game, you're also effectively kickstarting your company.
Right.
You may as well get the aspects of your company set up at the same time or early as possible so that you're not trying to do both at the same time. So you want to be able to separate company activities from just the game design and game publishing activities, which in theory are going to happen again and again. So you want to get the company activities out of the way with as soon as possible.
Okay, maybe I'll make that another episode someday because I already started looking into it, and there's a bunch of different options from the bank that I bank at as far as different business accounts. The cheapest one is like $6 or $7 a month, but then you pay per transaction after that, whereas you can get ones that are $20, $30, $40, $50 a month, and you get a certain amount of things included. So I got to kind of figure out those pros and cons later. So we'll do that later. Now, in the meantime, you've created a really cool spreadsheet with multiple tabs that'll help kind of get me started as a business, and then also specifically for my first game. So let's take a look at that now. Okay, so this is the Off the Page Games financial model version 3. So you've been working on this. This is great. So what are we looking at here?
So let me just walk you through a couple of things. So first of all, when you and I started talking, the spreadsheet that you had set up was kind of a mix of your business expenses, your corporate expenses, and the game design expenses per se. So what we wanted to do is make sure that we're separating kind of the recurring expenses that are going to be tied to the business versus the expenses that are going to be tied to a specific project or a specific game. Again, assuming that you're going to have more than one game published under this company as long as this first one is successful.
Yes.
So on this first tab, this is just very kind of rudimentary to get you thinking about your expenses tied with the company. Is we just wanted to set something up where you could start laying out, okay, what are all of your expected expenses for the year for the company itself, and expenses that are tied to the company are things that are going to be, you're going to pay these expenses regardless of whether you're doing a game or not. So you're going to be traveling, you're going to be going to shows, you're going to be doing banners and postcards and
Right,
websites.
right. Some of this
Well,
is very specific to something that is coming up that are maybe tied to this game, but I get what you're saying. These were just, I think, imported from my current expense list, so we can kind of clean this up and make it like a website. Maybe that's a setup fee, but there's obviously going to be, annual website fees and all that kind of stuff. So I got to kind of iron this out. So this is just a work in progress. Okay, cool.
yeah, and I think this is a good example of something that right now we've just gotten as a simple spreadsheet, but once you've got Quicken on board, then you'll use Quicken is really the
Oh,
place.
I won't even need this tab.
Correct, because that's where you're going to set up your budget. You're going to
Oh, I see. So this first section here is my budget, and then we scroll down, and then we have the actuals. So this is where I would enter in actuals, for example, if I wasn't using Quicken.
Yep.
Okay, and then down at the bottom, here's my variance. Am I over or under budget? Oh, cool. Okay, I get you. Okay, that's cool if you don't want to kind of do Quicken. This is a pretty easy way to do it. But I think I like what you're saying with Quicken as far as setting you up for tax season and trying to be an actual full-fledged business. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and we should probably stop using the Quicken name because we might not choose Quicken. It might.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure, sure. Like what is a financial software?
Yeah,
Business software?
yeah, it's effectively bookkeeping software.
Bookkeeping. Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
About it.
Okay, so now take us over to Project Plan Inputs game.
All right, so this is a tab that we would set up for each individual game that you're launching. This is really designed around getting everything that you need to decide whether a Kickstarter campaign, whether the metrics for a Kickstarter campaign are going to be the right price, the right costs that you can do for it, and how the economics work out for a Kickstarter campaign. So all of these yellow highlighted cells are where we would put our inputs in. So
Mm-hmm.
you would go through here and say, okay, what's the right price for the game? And at this point in time, we've got it set up as $50
Right.
with a version of $70 and a mix of expected, say, 75% of those units being on deluxe. The decision about whether a game is $30, $40, $50, $60, $70, there's a lot of thought that has to go into that in terms of what your costs are going to be, how many, like if you were to drop your price from $50 to $40, would you be able to get enough incremental units to make up for that,
Right.
that price drop?
I can speak to that for a little bit. Is that for me, based on this first game, I kind of looked at the concept, the content, the type of game it was, and it felt like it would be a $50 game. That's what if I saw this on a shelf, that's kind of what I would think I'd want to pay for that. And this is all in USD, by the way. So that's why I said 50. And then, as we all know, in the Kickstarter world, a lot of companies are doing a deluxe version. So far, this is currently my plan is to also do a deluxe version. We'll go through this together through this series and figure out if the deluxe version makes sense. I think it does. And then so that's what this uplift is. How much more money should the deluxe version cost? $20 more. And this 75% is based on just kind of casual information I've heard from other campaigns and from various Facebook groups saying that usually around 75% of your mix around there, but definitely comment below in the YouTube comments if you feel heard differently, if that number should be different, because again, this is yellow cell, so I can change it very easily to if it's only 60%, and that'll update all the other numbers in there. And that tells us our blended price is $65. And I'm basing this off of 2,000 units. That is huge amount to sell, so that's crazy. Maybe this has to be 1,000. I'm hoping that I can print at least 2,000, whatever, regardless of what my sales are. But let's just keep this at 2,000 units for now. Now this price is down here. This I actually told Kevin, so this isn't my cost because I'm nowhere near actually knowing what my costs are. This is what's saying if it is a $50 game for the standard, then my cost should not be more than $8.33 to make that game. And this is using a 6 times multiplier. Now, in the industry, I've heard a lot of people say that it should be a 5 times multiplier, meaning your game should cost 5 times less than what the retail is. So whatever your retail is, 5 times your production should be that. But that's of your landed costs. So that doesn't include shipping. So if you do 6 times, then that helps include some of that shipping price to figure that out. And then your deluxe is 1167. So it shows you a little bit here of what my production cost could be for that. And then I've even added shipping costs. Well, see now, actually, Kevin, now we've added shipping costs here, but it's still a cost, so it still has to be added in. So that's why. Yeah, so it's still an actual cost. And these are 100% estimates. Like this is per unit. This entire thing is per unit, right, Kev?
Yeah, and shipping fees and custom fees are probably going to be more something along the lines of a pallet or a dollar-based calculation.
Yes.
These are just rough ballparks to get us started.
Yeah.
We should have got something in there.
That's right. All right. So I've seen the version 2 and 1, so I know some of this, but so jump in when I'm missing something here. But so here is, I have to pay a license fee because I'm basing it on a comic book, which will be named shortly. And there's a couple ways to do that. One is you can pay them a flat fee, and then you get the rights to that license to make whatever's in your agreement for a certain amount of period of time. Sometimes that's thousands and thousands of dollars depending on the license. Because we're starting out and we're all kind of individual people, we all have thought this was a more fair way to do it, to start us off. Maybe in future ones I will offer a certain flat fee up front, but right now I'm offering $1 per. On top of that, these are just random numbers right now, so these could be anything. And the designer, this is all random. This could be anything, $1.50 per copy. This is could be as high as $2 or $3 depending on I think how many designers you have, so if that's per designer or whatnot. It's kind of weird for me because I'm half of the design team, so I only have to pay half the designer credits really, which is kind of funny. And then on top of the dollar fee for licensing, I'm also paying a percentage for licensing. So this is normal in the licensing world. You pay usually an upfront fee, and then you pay a percentage based on sales. So mine are both based on sales and a bit tricky. And what I've done here is I've added here on Kickstarter, here's what you get. And then later on through distribution, this is what you'll get. Just so that it's clear about how much you get. So for example, a designer gets 0% on Kickstarter because they're getting $1.50 per box on Kickstarter and then 4% on distribution. For example, these are just example numbers. Could be 6, 7, 8, depending on how many designers and whatnot. And percent artists you could potentially have as a percentage as well, if you want to do it that way, or it could be a flat fee, same kind of thing. So if you are starting out, maybe you can get an artist to agree to kind of come with you as more of a partner. You can do it as a percentage. And then we go into, these are all the fees. Yeah, Kickstarter in Canada, Kickstarter takes 10% of right off the top. So boom, just count for that. I've been told to kind of budget around 2% for your drop pledges. So that's how many people said they're going to pledge but never ever pay. Backer kit, so any kind of backer kit's any kind of pledge manager. It doesn't have to be backer kit, obviously it could be any of them, but it's around $2 per unit to handle it. This could go higher if you have more add-ons and whatnot. It's sometimes like 50 cents per add-on. So if it's a unit plus 2 or 3 extra things, it could be up to $3 or $4 per unit that you're shipping out. Credit card processing, so if you're going to be using something like Swipe, that's another 3% that they take. Everybody gets their cut, eh, Kev?
Yep.
Yep. That's business.
It works.
What is this again? Estimated shipping upcharge.
The reason I've included that, and it really is just a flow through, but when you're talking about the credit card processing fee, if you're using a pledge manager and the shipping charges are coming through the pledge manager, you're going to get dinged for a credit card fee on those shipping fees as well. Even if they're paying for if you're telling them shipping is going to be $20, and so let's say your real cost of shipping is $20, and they're going to give you $20 for that shipping cost, you're still going to pay 3% credit card processing fee on that.
Right.
Because they've still got to get that money to you via the Swipe app.
Right. So this is just data used for some other calculation somewhere?
Yeah, effectively, it's because you're going to lose 3% of that shipping
Yes.
to credit card
And
fees.
this is not a. I see. Okay. Okay. I gotcha. Everything else looked was a per unit thing. So this one is not necessarily a per unit per se, but 3% of $20 you
Yeah.
will. Yeah, okay.
It just kind of says that if you're going to send somebody a copy of the game and your real shipping cost is going to be $20, if they give you a $20 through the pledge manager, you're going to lose 3% of that
Right.
because you have to pay that credit card.
Okay.
So you might need to effectively upcharge for the 3%.
Right. That. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Something to think about. Okay, and then distribution cost per unit. Where'd you get that
Yeah.
from?
This is a big estimate right now based off the fact of it depends on what the model is in terms of how you're going to distribute the games from the manufacturing facility in China to the actual end customer, and whether you're going to incur additional costs for warehousing those games or actually packaging them up and shipping them off on a one-off basis to the actual Kickstarter backers.
Cool. And potentially if there's a flat rate. All right. Okay, so now take me through this. This is the first time I've seen this one, so you take me through this, Kev.
Yeah, let me just back up for
Oh,
one.
sure.
Back up to the section on the per unit royalties and the net revenue royalties. And this is really a Kickstarter based model, but we've also included distribution numbers in here. And the key thing here is that even though you're going out with this game on Kickstarter, the ideal situation is that the Kickstarter campaign is successful enough that there's interest from a widespread distribution deal for the game. And you have to make sure that when you're putting the game on Kickstarter, that the economics are actually going to work from a distribution standpoint.
Right.
The nature of Kickstarter is that it's relatively hard for you to lose money through a Kickstarter campaign if you hit your minimums.
Right.
However, if you kept all those same economics, if the cost per game is the same and the revenue, the retail per game is the same, you could be losing money in a distribution scenario.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Such a large chunk of money. So whenever you're thinking about your Kickstarter economics, you also have to be thinking about what does the DISTI model look like, and would this Kickstarter model be supported by a DISTI model, or do the economics just not work? Because the last thing you want to do is have a successful game on Kickstarter and then all these DISTIs come knocking, but you find out you're losing $20 a game in the DISTI.
Yeah, right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
This is great, Kev. This is awesome.
Okay,
Okay.
so going back, we're in the stretch goal
Yeah,
section.
okay, okay.
So down
And
here in
I'm going to
health,
start by saying I haven't seen this before, so these are hypothetical numbers. No way is the base going to be $130,000 is what I'm going to set my target for Kickstarter. But this is all just estimated kind of tomfoolery right now.
yep, yep. So the idea here is, Jay, you're talking about a way of being able to toggle in and out different stretch goals to apply to the base game. And
Hmm.
what we're effectively doing here is coming up with a recommended cost per unit at different threshold levels. And this is a big swag. I know you wanted something in terms of, okay, how much can I spend per unit above my base cost of the game? And the way I've done this right now is effectively I'm just holding your what we call our effectively our fixed expenses flat per game, right? Flat per unit right now. So in this case, down in cell D57, we haven't gone through this, but effectively you've got flat cost per game right now of $6.13. As your number of units goes up, that cost comes down. So if you're to get to a stretch goal, your cost per unit of these fixed expenses is going to come down. And this math just basically says if we're okay with spending $6.13 a game, how much additional room do I have? Because as the
Right.
volume goes up, this number comes down, which gives you more room in your stretch goals. So that was just kind of the basic math of how do I come up with a recommendation of how much you could spend if you were to get to 2,200 units or 2,000 units or
Right.
2,900 units.
And so where do I enter? Where do I enter into the yellow areas? So
Yeah,
how
so
did this get 130? How did that start at 130?
So this started out at 130 because that's 2,000 units times your $65. So
Ah,
that's our sort of, as we've kind of just playing around with things, that's our
so
base.
if I change this to 1,000, just to make it a bit more, let's see what it changes to. 65,000.
Yeah.
There you go. That makes a bit more sense.
Yep. Okay. So let's play with that. So now you can see your recommended cost per unit is different because now we're at $12.25 of fixed cost per game.
Interesting.
So this again is just a starting point, but it gives you an idea of
And those are just the fixed costs. They have nothing to do with the actual cost of manufacture the game? Or
correct.
wow.
So effectively thinking about your stretch goals as marketing dollars that you're spending. So if you were to have, so if you think about your fixed expenses, a lot of these are marketing costs.
Yes.
And your stretch goals are adding incentives, they're creating more awareness. So effectively they're a type of marketing activities is kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Yep.
Anyway, in terms of how the mechanics of this works, so let's say you're to say thicker cardstock, and thicker cardstock is 50 cents a game, and you're going to do this only for the deluxe versions.
Neat.
That's going to apply 50 cents into our income statement that we'll get to in a second to just your deluxe versions.
Ah.
Or if you wanted to apply it to both, or if you wanted to say down here, maybe one of your incentives is standard backers get deluxe version, something along those lines.
What?
Okay, so
That's
that's going to
crazy talk.
$2. Doesn't apply to
Right,
the
right, right.
so same idea.
Cool.
Let's just say that's crazy. Okay, so that's kind of the idea of how that stretch goal section works.
Right. And so then this number here of 1225 of total SG&A per unit would have to be added to my what like kind of like C12 and C13 basically. How where do I find out what my actual per unit cost is? That add,
Yes. So we'll get to that in the
oh, that's in the game one. Okay.
yeah, yeah, because we have to do a lot of math to get to that
I see, I see.
final bottom line.
Okay.
Okay, so just finishing off this
Yep.
inputs tab, um, down at the we've got all of our fixed expenses, and again, you might have a bunch of other things that you put in here.
Yep.
Um,
This is for the game and not for the company.
this is for the game and not the company. So this is any activity tied to just the game.
So if I had like my Adobe Suite, subscription, that would go in the company.
Yep.
Okay.
Unless you're doing that specifically just for the game.
Right.
Okay. Down here, we've got some assumptions about what a distribution model might look like.
Right.
So maybe distribution is going to be $54.99, and
Right.
Disty they're going to get 60%. They
Yep.
might have an order of 2,000, and then we effectively this is where we start getting something more complicated from a warehousing model,
Right.
and distribution also gets more complicated from a cash flow standpoint as well, because you've got to make sure that you as off the page games can actually afford to go and get units printed. So if a
Yeah.
distribution says, I want 2,000 copies, they're not going to give you the money for 2,000 copies up front. You're going to have to foot the bill, and they're going to pay you when they get those units delivered, depending on what that agreement is.
And then I should preface this whole thing from the distribution model perspective, so everyone's familiar. Generally speaking, and probably I'm sure there's outliers, you need as a publisher around 3 games before a distributor even wants to look at carrying your games. So this might not be something that takes effect until later. I'm hoping because I have some IPs that maybe some distributors would be interested. So, but obviously I'll take you through that in another video when I get to it as well.
Yep. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so that effectively wraps up this inputs tab.
Okay.
Again, to keep things somewhat simple, I've tried to separate out all of your inputs from your actual income statement. And this in the business is what we would call a pro forma income statement. So this isn't a official audited financial statement. This is a pro forma. It's a estimate of what we think the
Okay.
look like for the game.
Okay. I'm on that tab now.
Okay, so we're on the income statement game tab. So the way this is set up is that it's effectively going to take you all the way down to your profit per game and a bunch of different volume scenarios. So we've set up the base case here as being 1,000 units. That came from the inputs tab, and then we've done variances on that number of units and what that would mean to all of your financials. So let me walk down from a vertical standpoint just so we get some perspective of what we're trying to do here. So obviously you're going down through the ASP, the average selling price, what your pledged dollars are going to be, how many dropped units you're going to have, what that means from a dropped dollar perspective. And then we get to what we call our gross revenue after drop pledges, just to be very clear about how we're separating all of this out.
That makes sense.
This is important because your stretch goals might be based off your pledged dollars, but that's not necessarily what you're going to take
right home. And you'll probably get to it later, but we're looking at column G, and there's all these minuses, percentages on either side. That's just based on how well we do?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So these are giving you an idea if you're at 30% off your 1,000 unit base case.
This is what your statement looks like.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
okay.
These percentages,
sure.
Kind of range that you're comfortable with of possible scenarios.
Okay.
Okay, so then we've got our Kickstarter fees, and we've got our net Kickstarter revenue after the Kickstarter fees.
Oh, actually, I wonder, I'd have to look into that. I guess we wouldn't be charged Kickstarter fees on dropped pledges.
No. You should. I guess that's a good question. That's a good question.
That is a good question.
Drop pledges would come at the...
Yeah, because you only get charged fees based on whatever money is taken in.
Yep.
So we'll change that in the future. That's cool.
Yeah, actually, I think that's effectively how it's working. Your Kickstarter fees are being driven off your gross. Let me double check that though.
Yeah. Okay. It's all a work in progress. This is cool.
Yep. And then you've got your variable expenses. So this is all of your per unit expenses. So you've got your royalties.
And again, this is not necessarily accurate. This is just examples right now, just to share with the public. And
we're just trying to get a model working here. Okay, so these are all of your per unit expenses and your royalties on net revenue. And then you've got backer kit expenses, or your pledge manager expenses. We should probably make that more generic.
Where are you?
I'm down in G42.
Oh, way down here. Okay, because that's all royalties on net. Okay, total, and then you totaled them all together just so you get it. Okay, gotcha. Backer kit, gotcha.
With these numbers, you'd have $6,111 of total royalties, which is $6.24 per unit of royalties.
Right.
Okay, and then you've got your pledge manager expenses, which would be effectively your processing card per unit charges and your credit card processing charges.
Yep. Right.
Okay. And then depending on how you're distributing the units, we're down in row 49.
Yep.
If you're incurring additional costs of distributing those units to the actual backers, they will go in this section here.
Right.
And now we're down to G54, which is
so 49, that would be above and beyond any kind of. Oh, so you're talking about like a fulfillment.
Yeah, effectively. So if you were paying somebody
$2 a unit to fulfill it.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. And as an FYI, I haven't said this yet. This is a model where the shipping is paid for by the backer. That's a debatable topic about which is a better way to go. But because Kickstarter takes the 10% off of your pledged money, I just think it's silly for all of us to lose that 10% on that shipping fee, because I would effectively have to put it 10% higher just to make sure that I could cover the shipping. Otherwise, we're eating that 10%. So it's just more cost effective to do the shipping afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. It also puts you in a position where if you were to set a price based off what it costs you to ship a game to Arkansas and all of your pledgers come from Argentina,
yeah.
you're out a whole lot of money shipping all
Yes,
these
of course.
much further away.
All right, so this now we're to manufacturing costs.
Yes, so this is something that we might want to build out more once we get a little bit more familiar. And Jay, maybe you can talk about this when maybe there's a separate section on um, picking a manufacturer and how they will quote your costs.
Absolutely.
This is something that is very simple right now, but we might want to build this out a bit more.
Okay.
Okay. And then we've got stretch costs per unit, which is in section 58. So obviously in our base case, we've got 0 stretch costs because we just hit our threshold. But up here to the right where there's dollars here, this is because we've hit certain thresholds.
Nice.
So this is saying if we're at, in this case, 1,100 games, we're going to have 50 cents additional cost.
Got it. Neat.
Okay, so then that takes us down to our total manufacturing, which would include our stretch costs. And then we've got what we're calling our total cost of goods sold down here in row 72. Our COGS in this case is the sum of your manufacturing costs and your royalties, effectively, and your...
Fixed?
Yeah.
SG&A or no?
This does not include your SG&A. So SG&A is... so if we think about our expenses, we're going to have cost of goods sold, which we incur only when we sell something. So only when you build a game or sell a game do you incur cost of goods sold. Your fixed costs are fixed no matter what. So you get fixed costs just to get this campaign off and running.
Right.
But your COGS themselves will only occur if the Kickstarter is successful.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
That leads us to our gross profit numbers, gross profit percent, gross profit per unit.
This is interesting. So this is where I have no visibility to other businesses. So if there's other businesses that are watching this, it would be interesting to know, is this a sustainable income to have that kind of percentage? Is that super high? Is that super low? I have no idea. So I might have to change my entire model if I'm way off base here. But I'd like to hear from the audience if there's people watching.
Yeah. And what profit you make depends on what your goals are. And in this case, your profit needs to be able to support, number one, a potential distribution model. So would this economics work with a distribution model? Number two, effectively, you're trying to create a sustainable company. You want to be able to take this game to distribution. You want to be able to create another game. None of this works if you don't actually have a profit to be able to invest in the next phase of your company.
Right. Super smart.
Okay. So then you've got your fixed expenses down here.
Right.
We've talked about this on the prior
Yep.
page.
Per game, yep.
And then you've got your net profit and your net profit per unit.
And this is all just prefacing this by saying not many manufacturers will print 1,000. You probably have to print at least 1,500. So this is still you might be out more money and have extra copies on hand, which is obviously a wise thing to do anyways. And we'll probably get into that in a different episode. But this is just for kind of analyzing right now.
Yeah. So key thing to think about here is that you want your what does success mean to you from a game standpoint, from a company standpoint? You want the game to be able to support itself. So you want Kickstarter to be able to support an eventual disty run. If the game is successful on Kickstarter but nothing happens beyond that, that's fine. But I think your goal is if you're proud of a game, you want it to be in as many hands as possible.
Yeah.
Eventually means distribution. So you want your Kickstarter to be able to support your distribution, and you want your distribution effectively to support itself in the future as well. And out of all of that, you want the distribution to support the company so that the company can go on and make the next game.
Kevin, this has been illuminating. I see there's some other tabs. Is that for another day?
I think that's all for another day.
Yeah.
It's just getting into some more thoughts around what does success look like for you.
Okay. This is super wild. I hope the comments explodes with questions. And Kevin, can you help me jump on with some answers when I poke you for some more questions in the future?
Yeah, I'll just add my feed to the spreadsheet.
Cool. All right. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for your time, not just today and spending this time with me to go through this, but in prepping this and kind of the numerous calls we've had before this, and just kind of so you could wrap your head around what does the board game industry and Kickstarter model look like, and how can we make money doing this as a business.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Kev. Bye, everybody.